Music Appreciation 101.
Hey everybody, welcome back to Music 101 podcast. I am joined with Patrick Dean, a very special guest. Hello, Patrick.
Oh, what's going on?
What's up, man? We're going to be talking about all sorts of good music stuff, everything from social media to guitar playing to, SoCal, San Diego, LA, the beach, all that good stuff. And just to preface this, I want to, if anybody's joining the show for the first time, basically the idea is if you want to write great books, you need great readers. If you want to be a great chef, you need people that understand great food. That's kind of the premise of this podcast, is creating a sense of everything that goes into music, every part of it, so that when you listen to a song, it's a deeper, richer experience. And with that, let's talk music, Patrick.
Oh yeah, silky smooth.
So first of all, I just want to find out, how'd you get to be such a shredder? I've been watching your Lick of the Days like crazy, and amazing facility, great, familiarity and interesting lines throughout the fretboard. Kind of explain to me your path. How'd you end up falling in love with the guitar and becoming the guitarist that you are?
Yeah, it was a long and winding path, but I got into it really just because I finally at some point had I'd been playing guitar for a long time. I started playing guitar when I was 10 years old, but I never really got super into it.
Yeah.
Until I met this guy who I started kind of taking lessons from and started playing in his band, and he was giving me lessons, and he was the first person to really instill any really rock solid foundation in wanting to grow as a musician and as a guitar player. And so that was kind of really the beginning, was, kind of coming out of middle school and going into high school, which was when I really first started taking guitar super seriously. And I really started to enjoy guitar and enjoy music in a way that I just never really did before. An exercise. My parents always wanted me and my siblings to play music in some capacity. Mm-hmm. My older brother was a really great pianist. Mm-hmm. And he really had the limelight as far as the good musician in the family for the longest time. And so for me, it was always just kind of all right, I have to do this because it's something that my parents want me to do.
Okay.
And it really wasn't until I had somebody to look up to in music that I got super into it, which is really kind of part of what I love the most about what I do now. Is trying to get people who maybe aren't motivated enough in music or in guitar to really start taking it seriously, to kind of go to the next level. So it started with that, and just playing a ton by myself, coming home all through high school and stuff like that. I was never a go to the party type of person. I was always I'd rather just go home and sit out in my parents' living room and plug in my amp and just sit there and noodle around on the guitar, because it just brought so much joy to me that it never occurred to me to do any of the other things that might be considered standard high school experience things.
Yes.
And so I really kind of developed a really strong bond with the guitar during that time, and that was kind of really what got me over that initial hump of the guy who taught me to play guitar would always say that you'd be really good at playing guitar if you can play kind of what you want to hear.
Okay.
Hearing in your head, and maybe what you're able to sing or something like that. Mm-hmm. And so that kind of was that time period was what got me over that hump of sitting there and looking at a guitar and trying to figure out exactly how to make it sound good, or how to make it have any sort of pleasantness to it. Uh-huh. And it allowed me to kind of get over that and get more to a level where I could kind of take off from there.
Yes.
And so that's when music school came in. So I went to music school with a very minimal amount of theory knowledge, and knowledge of higher forms of music like jazz and things like that. Mm-hmm. And I really went in there just with the expectation that I was going to work super hard, and I really wanted to learn how to play those types of things, and I really wanted to understand those types of things. Mm-hmm. And so I did music school, and I really tried to like apply myself as best as I could, and that whole deal. And then, after music school, it came down to like me just trying to do as much session work as I possibly could.
Yes.
And trying to surround myself with like the best possible players that I could, just to try to like soak up as much, external knowledge as I could just from people who I was meeting and stuff like that. Cause there's so many great guitar players and
For sure.
musicians in general. So, session work. And then it was, touring and stuff like that. And, ever since like the pandemic and all the shutdowns, there's been none of that. So that's when I really got into social media.
Yeah.
And then that created a whole different drive for me, in terms of hearing from like all these people who I was capable of like connecting with, who otherwise would have been inaccessible to me.
Yes.
Or I would have been inaccessible to them. It allowed me to kind of renew my love for guitar and for music, just based on like, the positive feedback that I was getting from people. So
I love that.
I feel like the underlying theme is just having like this positive reinforcing force behind whatever it is that you're doing, especially in music.
Yeah.
It takes support, and it takes giving and getting support to make it happen.
I love that. I also feel like you touched on a few things that I'm all about. One of them is talking about combining the practice, gonna learn how to do this thing. I'm gonna learn this vocabulary, but then combining that with just kind of the learning by osmosis, just kind of being in it, being around people, what you soak up by that positivity, by those people that are better than you, like that contextualizes. You need both, but without like being in it and becoming fluent, it's half the equation.
Yeah, and you can learn a lot from listening to an album.
Yeah.
Learn a whole lot more, especially like being a visual learner.
Okay.
You learn exponentially more by sitting there and looking at somebody do it.
Yeah.
Which again is a really great thing about, social media, is that, you can sit there and you can watch it a bunch of times and you can just soak up the information.
Mm.
And, it comes from like listening to, not just people who are doing what it is that you're doing. Like I play guitar, but a lot of like great piano players influence me a lot.
Cool.
Not so much, but some drummers do, like rhythm and stuff like that, kind of creating like a different, rhythmic thing.
Oh yeah.
Like a solo or something like that. You can learn a lot from people outside of your instrument.
Totally. I mean, I felt when I was trying to really crack the nut of like swing, I listened to a lot of like New Orleans kind of music, and the snare drum parts always like that was like what I wanted to be, because it's not a perfect swing. They like rush and then drag. They have this like really cool push pull, and so it's like I tried to pull it onto guitar and bass, because it's like that chugga chugga is something I can't do in the computer,
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, and that kind of stuff, it's like swing feel can be so hard to like figure out unless you're just sitting.
Oh, God.
Like, how can you feel it unless you're like in a room where the sound is like coming at you from all angles and you're like, oh man, like here it is, like this is the thing.
Yeah, exactly. Those light bulb moments where it's like, oh, I get it now.
Yeah, exactly. And that's what comes. Those are like my favorite moments in music, when I'm like sitting around, and like a lot of times it happens to me even when I'm not holding a guitar. Like I'll just be sitting somewhere like thinking about the guitar, and all of a sudden this like musical thing will like pop up in my head, and I'm like, oh shit, I'm like, that's what that is. Like that's what I've been looking for. Like that's gonna be the sound. And I'll like get home and like sit down and with my guitar and like figure it out and be like, oh man, like this is the greatest thing ever. That's like, those are like the greatest things to me, is like those aha moments where you're like, oh, that's what that is.
Yes.
And you discover the sound that you've been hearing in your head for so long. You're like, oh, it's like a relief,
It's so true. It's so true. And it validates all of the work. Like you the stuff that you put in every day allows you to, when you have that spark, like turn it into something. But like if you didn't develop the facility, then you'd just be like, well, crap, I can't do it.
Yeah. And, that all comes from like, because like I said, I'm like a very visual learner. So like, even like I said, like when I'm not holding a guitar, it's like I'm thinking about a guitar fretboard in like a 3-dimensional space. And I'm like just imagining myself playing guitar like all the time. Like I'll just get spaced out constantly. And it's like, if somebody's talking, like all of a sudden they fade to the background, and I'm like thinking about the guitar, and I'm just like, it can be not great in certain situations, but in most situations it's amazing, because you're just sitting there like you know, coming up with something in your head that you've never thought of before, you know?
Yes.
I don't know. It's like, it's just a whole other thing. And you can get that from listening to a song too. Like when you hear somebody do something that
Mhm.
you've been hearing in your head for so long, you go like, oh man, that's it. Rewind. Like, what did he just do?
Yeah.
Figure out how to play it, you know?
Yes. I'm so curious because you're talking about visual learner and three-dimensional stuff. One of the like aha moments for me on guitar was I think I was talking to a jazz drummer and they were talking about shapes, like playing in shapes, like like they would hit toms in like ways that like form geometric patterns in their heads. And then I started to like play that with like triads and stuff like that. I've seen you do some really cool triad stuff in some of your lessons. Do you think in shapes? Or like how do you approach like the fretboard as a visual learner? Like what made those things click and not just be like scale, cage system patterny things, but like musical?
I feel like the first instance of like a breakthrough in that way would actually be when I finally was able to like, when I was finally able to just know every single note on a fretboard, just, any string, any fret, like you can figure out whatever that note is.
Yeah.
And like brutally knowing it, like just like in a snap, like being able to say exactly what it is without having to think like, oh, like what are my octave patterns? So like, you can learn the low E and the A string.
Uh-huh.
All the other four strings on a guitar, like it still is somewhat of a mystery. So that was the first one in terms of the way that I just was able to visualize what key I would be playing in any given moment at any given point on the fretboard. So that was the first one.
Yeah, that's great.
The way that I really visualize it is, I guess shapes, but like it's really just like those caged patterns.
Right.
It's, the whole thing.
Yes.
I'm like, oh, I'm going to like jump up to the C pattern and like play this little ditty. And like, that's what I know how to do there. You kind of, I always say this to like students, especially people who are like just starting out. It's like, you have to learn how to play guitar and then you have to like completely unlearn how to play it in order to really get good at it. And so now it just comes down to like, the whole entire fretboard becomes like this dot pattern.
Okay. Yeah.
Which I already know that are in the key and that we're at. And then, beyond that, a lot of what I do is also involving a lot of chromatics and stuff like that, especially with shreddy stuff, because you got to like have notes somewhere. Otherwise, it's just not going to work out. So then it comes down to like, learning where you can break the rules and just like play whatever notes are right there. And it doesn't matter as long as like the downbeat is the right note.
Cool.
And I learned a lot of that from jazz too, because it's like, if you're playing like some crazy altered line over the or going to a one chord, all those notes don't even matter. You can play all the wrong notes in the world, but as long as you land on the right note, everybody's going to be like, bravo.
Yes. Yes.
So good. Worst, if you land on that right note, you're golden.
That's one of the things that people I don't think realize. Like that's one of the separator points from a good musician to a great musician. Great musicians know how to turn their mistakes into successes.
Yeah. Oh yeah. 100%. Especially in like a situation where you're the soloer. Right?
Yeah. Yeah. Exactly. Yeah.
It's kind of hard to like make if you play a chord wrong. On
right. Yeah.
Yeah. Everybody looking at you like, what the heck are you doing? But yeah, as a solo, it's like learning how to just do the wrong thing, but make it sound right, Yeah.
And sticking those landings.
Yeah, exactly. You just sticking those landings. Like, like the freaking in the Olympics, the people who like jump off the trampoline and then are just spinning around the air. I don't know what they're doing. On that mat and they're like, bam. It's like, yeah,
Totally.
Into it, but it's the same thing. You're just kind of, flailing in the wind, especially with some of those shreddy things that I do and that I like to do so much. It's like a lot of that stuff is just kind of like throwing in notes to fill up the space.
Cool.
Or kind of surrounded by the target notes that I know I want to go to.
I like it.
And so, a lot of also what I think about is just pentatonics, like just wherever the pentatonic scale is in any given situation is, that's a lot of the battle for guitar players is, figuring out how to make that pentatonic scale work. Cause those are notes, that's most of it right there.
That's the magic. That's the magic.
That work before you make anything else work, really.
Totally. And it's fun that we're talking about these things because so in some of the earlier podcasts, I talked about like what is a chromatic scale of like basically Western music. Like we got all those 12 notes. You're going to use all those 12 notes. have anything that you want at that buffet, you can take some. Pentatonic scale's like on the opposite end. It's like we are picking 5 of these notes and we're going to make those sing.
Yeah, exactly. And that comes into like what I really appreciate about a lot of guitar players is a guitar player who can play not a lot of notes, but say a whole lot with those notes. Because I have such a hard time doing that a lot, especially with like the social media stuff, because it's like, you know, every day if I post a slow lick, it's like everybody's like,
yeah, right.
Shred. And then like if I post shred licks, it's like a bunch of people hitting me up being like, you're playing too fast.
No.
You know, one of those things. But that's what I really appreciate about like really great guitar player is like, yeah, somebody who can just play something that's like moving, you know?
Yeah.
When was the last time you heard a song that like really hit you and like moved you? For me, like a guitar solo was like when I heard Jimmy Barnes do Stone Cold, but it's like him with Joe Bonamassa and his son and like the whole band and stuff like that. And Joe Bonamassa's solo on that song blew me away when I first heard it. And it like brought me to tears just about because it was like so good. And he's a shredder. So
yes.
But like most of the solo is just all melody. And it's like so good. It's like, you know, and that's what I strive for, especially when writing a solo for something like my own music.
Oh yeah.
Less notes. I try not to shred.
No, but it's like informed by the medium. If you have a 20-second clip, it's like I'm gonna throw some notes at you.
Oh yeah, absolutely. Even the days are I never.
Oh yeah.
It's like I don't. Yeah, it's like there's no time. No time at all.
Yeah. So when you're making those lick of the days, you're just like, okay, we're gonna get like one because they're usually what like they're under 10 seconds usually, right? How fast are you usually?
The longer lick of the days are like 9 seconds.
Nice.
Very short. They're like never that long. The only ones that are longer are like the more recent ones that I've been doing, which are like 20 seconds long, which is even still like a blip in the radar.
Right. So composing to that space is like you think of that, right? Is like it'd be a completely different headspace than composing to a song you're composing to. Here's one lick.
Yeah.
Different headspace.
You know, in terms of like how I think about composing it, I try to like, I guess in my head, visualize what I could do with like maybe 2 bars of music.
Okay.
That's usually how long each of them are is like, you know, 1, 2, 3, 4, 2, 2, 3, 4, done.
Yeah.
You hit it there. It's like, whatever. So it's, you know, I don't know. Like for me, it's a lot of those come to me when I'm just sitting around and noodling on the guitar. So like what I'll do is just on like one day, I'll film like 10 of them, you know, just cause like, I'm like, all right, I'm just going to like, instead of not filming myself, like noodling, playing guitar, I'll just like actually film myself doing it. Cause that's what I do all day anyway. Sit around with a metronome on and like, you know, write licks or like write a little thing, like a little ditty of a melody line or something like that, you know?
For sure.
And so, yeah, it's really as simple as that. Like, I'll just sit there and play something until something sounds cool. And then I have my phone always like sitting in front of me with the, you know, I use a ring light and stuff like that. But I have it set up and I just turn it on and say the lick of the day and hit the lick. And then I just move on.
I love it.
It's very much a passive process. Like I got into doing it because I was super lazy. And it was like during the pandemic. And so I was like, I need to do something. I don't have the attention span to like make, you know, a backing track in Logic and then like film it and then like line up the audio to the video and then like bounce that and do that whole thing. Like that just takes too much time. So it really just came from me being lazy and wanting to be like, you know, all right, I can do 7-second licks and I can film a ton of them and that's all I need to do.
But there's a certain wisdom in that though, because I think a lot of people have such grand ideas where it's like I'm going to do a million different things and then it's going to be perfect and everyone's going to love my masterpiece, and then they just don't finish anything ever.
Yeah, it's just about like the consistency of doing it. Yeah, like it's about just saying like, all right, fine, like that's good enough. Like first started doing lick of the day, I was a perfectionist and I was like, I need to hit this and it needs to be. I'm like, I'm gonna sit here and like do it so well so that everybody can see how good I am. And then now it's like, you know, it's mistake riddled. Like it's not perfect. You know, sometimes they're less good, but it's weird because those are the ones sometimes that do better.
Love it.
human, it's like
Yeah, right.
everything being perfect and like, people always wanting to make it look like they're having the best time possible and that everything's perfect. It's like a little bit of reality and a little bit of like messing something up.
Mm-hmm.
Like it,
Cool. That's cool. That's been one of the weirdest things for me about like more recent social media is like how big people smile now when they're like playing drums and stuff.
Yeah, dude, the whole smile. I find the smiles creepy and like
Yeah, me too.
I'm like my mouth is open and stuff. I'm like trying not to look weird. Yeah, the socials, yeah, all the smiling and stuff like that stuff's hilarious to me. I try not to do it. I know I do it sometimes, but that's usually just because I'm like looking at the camera and I'm like, this is hilarious. Because I'm just sitting in my room for like, a couple hours, just yelling at my phone. I'm pretty loud. I know my neighbors can hear me. And it's like, I know they can hear me just yelling over here.
Yelling lick of the day 10 times in a
Yeah, I got my roommate, he has his room, there's a balcony, and he sits out on the balcony a lot, and like he gave me the inside tip that like when I leave my windows open loud, because he was like sitting out on his balcony and he like heard me playing and like saying stuff, and he's like, dude, he's like, everybody can hear you. I was like, oh no, but it doesn't matter.
Free concert people.
I have to hear it. Like I hear people playing guitar all the time, but next door to me, literally right in this hallway, across the hallway from me, somebody played like a trumpet like a week ago.
Cool.
Practicing trumpet, and I was like, this is awesome. So I'm like, I don't feel bad about it.
No, that's like one of my favorite things low key about like LA, because I'm in San Diego. I love San Diego, from San Diego. One of the fun things about LA though is some of the neighborhoods, nobody cares if you're loud at all. Like my buddy Okudaxish, there are like full on mariachi bands, loud music. There's like a party every night of the week for different people. And so he just can like play drums at like any hour. It's just like, I'm going to go play some drums. I can't do that in San Diego. People would freak out.
Yeah, exactly. It's hard. That's why I love that I'm just a guitar player. Like,
yeah,
friends who are drummers, and they're always like, oh man, you have such a luxury. Like you can just sit in your room and like play your licks and like film the videos, and it's so easy.
I know.
They have to go to a lockout.
I know.
Sit there and like, tune their drum heads and do the whole thing. And it's like a whole different involved process. I'm very fortunate.
Yes, it is a beast.
Guitar strings every once in a while.
Yeah, I know, right? And even then.
And then, yeah, it's like, sometimes I don't.
Yeah,
totally. Guitar strings get nasty.
Yeah, for sure.
Freaking shout out Ernie Ball. Thank you.
Thank you. Sponsor us, Ernie Ball.
Seriously.
I want to talk to you about teaching. And because it's cool. Like I have a similar experience where somebody that was like, that guy in, I guess, junior high for me, late junior high, early high school, that like put the wind in my sails, and I wouldn't be sitting here with a crazy mask and a bananas shirt without him. I want to talk to you about your, like, what have you learned from your teacher that you're passing on? And then what have you kind of like innovated on your own? What level of like emulation versus person, like your individuality, are you imparting in your teaching?
Yeah, I feel like, especially from, and I'll say his name, Andrew.
Andrew.
Part of like what Andrew really instilled in me was that first thing that I talked about, which was just knowing every single note on your fretboard.
Cool.
That's the most important thing in the world. With keyboard, like all you have to learn is one octave and all the notes. You know what I'm saying? With guitar, there's shapes to like each area, and like there's, it's a varying degree of, complexity as far as fingerings for things. So learning the notes on your fretboard is really gonna be the first thing, because that's really what's gonna unlock like a lot of the tools that you have at your disposal for like opening up guitar to yourself. And so that's really the first thing that I like. Anytime I give somebody a lesson, first thing I always talk about, because they're always like, like, what do you do? Like, how did you learn how to do what you do? And it really starts there.
Yeah.
It's like musical literacy and being able to, even though, you're not going to go to a gig and have to like sight read a chart,
Right.
But being able to sight read a chart is pretty sweet. And
Pretty
that's
sweet.
nice, especially if you got to learn songs quickly.
Yes.
So musical literacy is the first one. And that came from Andrew. So that was like all just him coming right through me and me wanting to make sure that people did that. As far as like, stuff that I've kind of implemented on my own, a lot of what I do and a lot of what I do that allows me to have a lot of different variations of licks and to make like licks that sound different, even though they're using similar mechanics, is a lot of just learning how to take like any sort of motif and move that throughout the fretboard. I don't
like it. Yeah.
Play guitar for a second and like.
Yeah, please. Yeah.
I'm just going to play with the acoustic guitar so that you can.
Yeah, perfect.
But like if we're in, all right, lick of the day is always in fucking A minor. So if you have, like a motif that goes, you can do that, there, you can do it. You can do it anywhere, right? Like, so you can move that little, like you move that. I always think of them as like motions.
Okay.
Right?
Yeah.
Motion on a guitar. And the motion it can be related to like a 3-note per string pattern. It can be related to like a pentatonic scale pattern. But basically you take that motion and you just apply it to the next available note down in every instance.
Yeah.
So you kind of just start to take the mechanic of a lick and you apply it elsewhere. That's what like a lot of the legato stuff is that I do is it's just taking like a little, 3-note per string pattern and then just applying it to every note that I can. And then it's applying that movement to like chromatics too.
Yeah.
Outside of the key and that sort of thing. So that kind of, for me, like is always where I lose people. I feel like I don't think of it as being that heady, but I feel like to a lot of people it is heady because it's like, it's like, you can say one word to get a concept across, but you can also say like another word, or you can say like a different sentence. You can word it.
Yeah.
It's like, it's that kind of thing. Like you're like taking what you already know and you're just applying it to something else,
Yes.
In the end, some sort of new finger movement. So that's, I don't know. That's kind of like my main thing
that's what I was trying to say with like the shape thing. Like, or it's like people, like synesthesia where they like, you taste a smell or you like see a color. Like this is like one of the things that helped it click for me, like that. You have a motive. That's like a triangle, say. You have a triangle and you're just going to move that triangle onto different points, but it's still a triangle.
Exactly. And it looks slightly different maybe, but it's this, that's a great way to look at it. Like I've never even thought to
Well, that's part of what like unlocked it for me because I try to do a lot of triad stuff and I do a lot of most of my stuff is recording, and so like a lot of what I think about is stacking guitar parts, and the way that I stack parts is to like think about voicings, like that's most of what I do is just thinking about voicings. Yeah,
that's like exactly, and the voicings is a great way to apply that to something like outside of just a single note deal. It's like. Yeah, you have all these different inversions of a chord and it can give a completely different effect based on whatever voicing it is that you're using.
Exactly. So to give a non-musician insight into that, voicings, we're just talking about, we take the same notes of a chord, G, B, D, and then you're going to, instead of playing G, B, D, you're going to play B, D, G. Exactly. Or D, G, B. It's the same things, it's just the order and who's the highest note, who's the lowest note. Even what string things are on, that's kind of crazy to me, is it can be the same note, but if it's on different strings, it can have like a certain tonal thing, because it's like a thicker string or a lighter string. I don't know exactly how to put it.
I think about that all the time with recording. Like, cool. Especially bass guitar. Oh my God. If I can get away with playing an entire bass part on the low E string.
Hell yeah.
Will not move. Like I will just slide up and down on that one string because it's like it holds so much more weight. Like a thicker string will always sound meatier.
Cool. Yeah. I totally agree.
I'm not like a down tune guy, but like I know that like people who play extended range guitars and like who down tune and stuff like that, like there's a reason they're using a thicker string,
Yep.
It's part of retention, but it's also partially because that string's like sounds sick.
Totally, man.
You're not gonna be able to get that kind of tone on like an unwound string.
No, that's why I went for a 5-string bass, man. I was like, I need that low B. I need that.
I used to own a 5-string fretless bass, and then
Yes.
my roommate gave me a free conversion to a 4-string by dropping it. But he broke off the low, so it's literally just a 4-string.
Just a normal bass now. That's fine.
Totally fine, but
Yeah.
split. I still use it all the time, but it's hilarious.
That is hilarious. It was like not meant to be.
No, it was like when our like apartment flooded and like
Oh my God.
left. I was gone, and so he had to like move all of my stuff out of like the room that I was in, like the living room,
Crazy.
it all into his room, and then like I came back and we started moving everything out, and I was like, oh shit! I was like my bass is broken, but it was fine. It's like it's still a 4-string bass.
Yeah. Right. Exactly. It's just normal now.
It's just a normal. It's a custom conversion. Like that's why I always tell people, I'm like, this is a 1-of-1 bass where it's a 5-string. It actually feels really comfortable in my hand too, because the fretboard is wider and
Cool.
so
Yeah. Okay.
kind of like rests on it a little bit more naturally.
I like
And
it.
it feels great. Like it's the most comfortable bass I've ever played.
I love that.
Yeah, it's fantastic. Happy accidents.
Yeah, exactly. I wanted to ask you about adapting your teaching method to like a passive medium where it's not like directly like you're having a conversation or you're like reacting to a student, but you're instead like filming videos. I've always kind of wondered about that. Like, was that a challenge? Are there different techniques that you kind of employ, or does it not feel passive because you're getting comments and feedback and you're kind of going back and forth?
I feel like, I don't know, like to me, it doesn't feel that much different from like sitting with a student and like wanting to like show them some sort of concept. Yeah, I guess like the main difference would be like, it's not just immediate, like I'm sitting talking to somebody feedback.
Mm-hmm.
But I don't think it was necessarily a challenge because like, I mean, I don't know, like so much of my personality, I feel like shows through in the videos that like, for me, it's just as simple as like talking to a camera instead of like just talking to myself in my own head about like, on guitar.
Yeah.
Because a lot of times that's what I'm doing is just sitting there like thinking about what I'm going to say and then just like saying that.
Yes.
I feel like where the real challenge comes in is like wanting to personalize it for each individual person, right? Because like everybody has their own needs and their own, they have their own questions and stuff like that. Mm-hmm. Which is what's great about private lessons as opposed to like just filming a 20-second guitar lesson,
Totally.
like Instagram and TikTok.
Yeah.
But it doesn't feel, crazy different, again, like it's just me talking about whatever the concept is, as easily as I would try to explain some other concept in real life, except actually probably even easier because I'm not sitting there getting tongue-tied talking to somebody, trying to like on the fly think about a concept and then how to like verbalize it to make sense. I kind of sit in my room and, talk it out loud until it sounds about right. And then I just kind of go for it.
Cool.
A lot of what I talk about in those videos is really just trying to name the notes that I'm playing, because like if you know all the notes and I tell you what note it is, you're gonna be able to find the note. It's, it's a guitar. It's not that complicated. It's like, right there.
Right.
Seeing it too. So it's like one of the notes, I feel like people are able to learn just as much from 20 seconds of a 20-second Instagram video as much as they would if I just had 20 seconds to sit there and tell somebody about something.
Cool. Yeah, that's a good point.
Because I get sidetracked
Yeah, totally.
all over the place.
Totally. That's a great point. Yeah, I wonder, I always see people, they're usually people that haven't like learned or something, that they just kind of throw out like, oh, you can just learn it all on YouTube or you can just learn it all through TikTok. And like yes and no, I guess. Like, yeah, you can, but I definitely think like that other half, like we talked about, of like playing with others or private lessons, or like it can be any combination of those things. I still find a lot of like value in the stuff in between the gaps.
Yeah, it takes so much of just like looking at somebody and watching them do it and like finding a really strong like connection with what somebody is playing is especially if you find someone who hopefully they're alive, hopefully you don't
Yeah.
some like long dead guitar hero,
Right.
but like watching them do it and in real person too, because like that's what was so great about having Andrew was that he lived across the street from my
Cool.
parents in San Diego. And so like, I could see him anytime I wanted to, really. He would bring over his guitar, we'd sit around, he would like leave amps at my parents' place and like I could just like play through his amp, and
How cool.
he would like leave guitars sometimes, and like,
Yeah.
it was like stuff like that where it's like you really just you become so much more connected to it by like being physically there and by like seeing it happen in real person. Because that can also demystify a lot of it too. Like I feel like there's a certain level that you can get to where, you'll be able to like look at somebody play something on guitar or any instrument. Well, if you're fluent enough in it, you look at anybody play something on guitar and like you can kind of understand the gist of what it is that's going on, regardless of how well your ear is trained, But like sitting there watching somebody do it, you get a lot of information. And you see how their hand is moving.
Yeah.
You can see exactly what the inflection is, maybe like, are they picking all those notes? Are they not picking all those?
Yeah.
Because it can be tough to tell sometimes, like in the red, it's like, people throw legato licks around that sound like they're picked.
Yep. Yep.
They're, it's crazy and it can be tough to tell sometimes.
Oh, I totally agree. I agree that that's probably the number one for me is articulation. So like for those that don't know that's like all the right-handed stuff, the way that you're actually hitting the string. Game changer for me was learning about different picking techniques and holding the pick differently. I hold the pick depending on what tone I'm looking for, and then also different pick density. I like really thin picks for rhythm and then really thick picks for lead. Curious, do you have anything like that? Do you have any preferences, or do you kind of equipment stuff? Yeah.
As far as picks are concerned, like about 3 years ago, I made the decision to stop trying to like chase like one pick. Like I didn't need like the pick of destiny. In music school, excuse me. In music school, I got really caught up with that. And, like everybody played jazz 3 picks and like ones, and like that's the one that like Eric Johnson uses, and like that's the secret to his shred.
Right.
It's not.
Yeah.
It's not. All it really is about is like finding whatever works for you. So like I use like anytime I go to a pick store, it's usually the purple color. I get the purple picks.
They Dunlop?
I have a Dunlop one. Yes. These
nice.
are ones. They're slightly thinner, which I actually prefer the thicker one. So I've been using the Dunlop one. But yeah, let's see, 1.14 millimeters. So, for people who don't know pick densities, it's not crazy. Yeah.
No, it's not crazy. I play 1.21 millimeter.
Yeah, which makes a difference. It's I can tell the difference when I'm playing one of these 1 millimeter ones versus when I'm playing the 1.14. It's drastic to me.
I have no idea how thin this is, but this is what I play for rhythm. Just a Fender thin. These suckers rock.
I used if I'm recording, I'll use thinner picks.
Yeah.
The guitar specifically. But 9 times out of 10, like especially if I'm at a gig, it's just a regular pick because
Totally.
I went to like NAMM and was like, oh my, like where's my pick? Where it was like this was the pick that was handed to me, and I was like, I just need to know how to be able to play on it. Like if some dude at like a guitar store was to just like throw a bunch of picks at me,
right?
I would find one of these in there. So like, that's the whole reasoning why I use these picks.
Love it.
They're big and flabby, but yeah, like what you were talking about, like just grabbing a pick in a different way, like picking, and I'm gonna like lay into some shred. It's like choking off most of that pick.
Yeah.
Not really there. But if I'm playing big rhythm chords and I'm like, jangling around, it's like pick out.
I like that you do. So that's what I taught myself was how to pick like that later on, like in college, to do the balanced picking, to like be able to actually have equal force. Because when I started, and I still play like this probably majority, I was loosey goosey, Stevie Ray Vaughan style.
Yeah. I always do that. Sometimes I'll go like that.
Okay.
The camera, like a little half claw type situation. Time it's like where my hand falls.
Yeah.
And like a lot of times I do that too, because like if I'm going to go from finger picking to actual picking,
Yep.
or the pick,
Yeah. Tuck it.
or doing my other stuff, and then it's just right there for grabbing it.
Totally.
Like a lot of people do it like, like this type of thing. I can't do that.
No, I can't do that either.
That eliminates too many fingers. So I'm like, it's there and it's there. Those
Yeah. Yeah, I do the same thing. I do the exact same thing. Tuck it in there.
That's what
You bring out an interesting point, because we don't talk about this on guitar as much. Drummers talk about this a lot, but I think it's a big deal on guitar too. Just like a basketball shot, it's like, yeah, there are proper mechanics, but so much of it is about your body and the way that your body works. You're not just going to like go shoot like Kobe. It's like, that's Kobe's body. You're not going to shoot like LeBron. That's LeBron's body. I feel the same way with the guitar. It's like, there's a certain part of it is like, this is how your hands are built. This is how your wrist is built. Do you agree with that?
Yeah, absolutely. Like the way that you sit with a guitar will change over your career of playing guitar, or just any instrument. Like the way that you sit, will change. Like, my dad is like not super musically inclined in the way of like playing anything. He has a very large affinity for music and everything involved in music. And like one of the first things he told me when I started going to music school was that like the way that I held a guitar was different.
Cool.
Like so true, because like,
yeah,
a lot of people don't think about this, and like, kind of the more Zen aspect of playing guitar is, the whole like muscle tension thing, and like learning how to properly warm yourself up in order to play guitar. Like when I was going to music school and stuff, we were like stretching our arms all the way up here and like massaging the muscles all the way down to your finger, because this muscle gets connected all the way up here and it gets in your neck, and it's a whole thing. So if you're tense up here, tense down here, it's like a whole thing, so
yes.
Yeah, just like natural as you can get with holding a guitar is usually gonna be the best thing. And it translates to picks, like the most natural way that you can hold your hand so that your whole wrist is loose, so you effectively do this to like actually tremolo pick or like is going to make it vastly easier.
Yes, I've always had some trouble explaining tremolo picking, like how to do it. Curious if you have a better way to do it. For those that don't know, tremolo picking is like super fast. It's like, for me, it's like this. How do I even do it? It's so weird to even do it without the tension of a string. But like a lot of students, some of those, like some older guys too, they're like, "How do you do that?" And I'm like, "Well, I kind of just do it." It's one of the things I'm like worst at explaining.
I was always explained to it as like, it's like the motion of like, if you're going to go to like open a doorknob.
Okay.
Grab a doorknob. That motion, that's your tremolo picking.
Yeah.
Like you're like yanking a fishing line a little bit, like
yeah, that's a good one. Because that's the tension, right? Yeah.
Tiny little motion, yeah. Because you don't need a whole lot of motion. Like the distance between strings is not that far, so it's tiniest, littlest thing that gets that going, and it's all about tension. Like especially with like what am I trying to think of? Not economy picking, but when you're picking every single note. I'm terrible right now, but a lot of people ask me how I get to be quicker with doing that, and it's really just about doing it until it becomes until the whole arm goes loose. That's when you're going to break through. Is when you're able to just figure out what it is that your muscles have to do to get the least movement, like the most precise movement.
Yes.
Little, you're just bouncing back and forth across a string. You watch mandolin players do that all the time. Like the mandolins are even on a smaller scale.
Exactly.
They're like the close
rip.
People like Andy Wood and stuff like that.
Yeah.
When they have like those close-up shots of what their pick is doing. Is
yes.
It's like that kind of technique. It's insane.
And mandolin's a great example because they actually use a pick.
Yeah, exactly. And they use a tiny pick.
Yeah.
Oh gosh, mandolin picks are small. It's so small. And they're doing 2 strings. So it's like you're playing a 12 string.
Right.
But it's smaller scale. It's absolutely insane. But it's the same kind of mechanic. And those guys get it down
oh yeah. To a crazy degree.
Phase.
Totally. No, I love that. And it again, like, looking at another instrument, looking at another player, finding that inspiration is huge.
Yeah, it's tantamount to finding, the thing that's going to push you the furthest in music is finding other people outside your instrument, you know, because that's who you're going to be playing with. You're not always going to just be sitting there playing with a guitar player, you know.
I love that. And on that awesome knowledge bomb, I think we're going to wrap up there. This is awesome talking to you, Patrick.
Yeah, likewise.
For sure. Hopefully we can hang out in person one of these days. We're both in SoCal.
I'll freaking holler at you.
Yeah, man, we can trem pick together.
Absolutely.
Yeah, bro. Awesome, man. Pleasure. And talk to you later. Thanks, everybody, for listening.
See ya.
appreciate